If you signed up for Ohio Law 2023, you are in the right place. And today's presentation, you're going to hear about some trends and investigations and highlights in governmental ethics under the Ohio ethics law. I guarantee that you're going to be entertained by some of the things people do in our great state, many of which falls under the category of you can't make this stuff up. I've heard Susan's presentation before, and you really can't make some of this stuff up. But maybe as important as hearing some good stories and what people do or don't do, I know you're going to get some ideas and some things to leave with that really are relevant to all of us that are public employees, assuming most of you are, and things that you need to really be keeping in mind. Our presenter is Susan Willeke. She's the Education and Communications Manager with the Ohio Ethics Commission. She has more than 30 years experience as a government relations professional with a specialty in public affairs, communications, public speaking, and has been with the Ohio Ethics Commission since 2005. Time flies.
It does.
So please join me in welcoming our presenter today, Susan Willeke.
Thanks, John. Okay, right off the bat, I'm willing to admit I have more than 30 years of state experience, as long as you're willing to concede my first job was when I was 8 years old. We're good? Okay, we start off on the right foot then. Okay. Yes, the ethics lady, you're allowed to lie about your age and your weight in the ethics law. That's my decision. I have the executive determination there. Hey, for anybody I've met before, nice to see you again. If there's anybody that's brand new to the whole idea of the Ohio ethics law, if you've never done a training or a session with me before, and if you were just a little bit nervous about starting off your conference with the ethics law, I understand. I totally get it. Some trainings go really, really well, don't they? Others, maybe not quite what we expected.
It's not some fun boxing match, okay? It's about escaping your life. So strike, scream, run. Let's try.
Yeah, so not every training goes the way that we expected it to go. So I hope no one will be injured in the making of today's ethics law training, okay? Before we jump in to all the things that the ethics law says to us and people in public service, both things we can't do, but all the things that we need to know that elevate us as people in public service as well, I always like to spend just a minute or two on the things that go back to the real why of the Ohio ethics law. This is not always the stuff that people assume. Now, in all fairness, I've been doing this a long time, as John mentioned, and I feel like when we have these huge, gigantic scandals, big investigations that go on, I feel like I ought to acknowledge them. Let me say this right off the bat. It does not matter to me what side of a political aisle that you sit on. It doesn't matter to me, right? But when you have a story like this past year, when a former Speaker of the House is convicted of accepting $60 million in bribes, it doesn't matter your politics. That's a news story, right? You kind of have to acknowledge that regardless of our backgrounds. But here's what I will tell you, as someone that speaks about the ethics law for a living, when those huge stories go down, don't get me wrong, there's a part of me as someone in the world of the ethics law that does think, you know what? I think if someone in public service, regardless of their position, hired, elected, appointed, full-time, part-time, management, not management, union, not, if they really do egregiously violate the public's trust, I think there ought to be some accountability under a criminal law. Yes? Okay, so that's one half of my brain. I will admit to you, though, here's the other half of my brain when those gigantic stories go down. There is a part of me that goes, ah, man, because I can tell you after all these years of speaking about the ethics law, I can tell you what happens when those huge investigations and stories and scandals occur. In the minds of the normal, hardworking public employee in Ohio, your staff back home, the people that work in your city or your township or your public library, your school district, they read those stories, they see those headlines, and here's what happens. People think this to themselves. Oh, is that what this law is about? What this isn't me. I'm never going to be important enough that someone's going to offer me tens of millions of dollars in bribes. I'm never going to embezzle public money to purchase popcorn machines and wildebeests. If any of you do think I'm making that one up, Google that one later just for giggles and chuckles, okay, kind of thing. And so people end up mentally dismissing this law as having any real relevance in their lives. And here's what I will tell you. This law is important to you and to me. Certainly as people in public service, we are all subject to this law. Make no mistake, never let people back home tell you, well, I think it's only for the board or the management. No. Every single person in public service, from the governor of the state of Ohio to the person who's the part-time custodian at your local public library, we are subject to the ethics law based on our public service, right? But here's the real why, the benefit of the ethics law. Certainly because it's a criminal law, we all want to obey it. None of us want to get charged with a crime, I grant you. But more foundationally, here's the benefit of the ethics law. You have the right, and I don't just mean as a public employee or public official, as a citizen and a taxpayer, you have the right to know that every single time government acts, it does so fairly. Right? It does so objectively. Certainly the board where you work, but I mean also your state government, the county that you live in, the city, the township, the village that you call home, that school district, that police and fire. You have the right to know every time they spend money, they move forward in a project, they retain this consultant, they hire that employee, they issue that grant money. You have the right to know that that government process was not tainted by someone's personal advantage or benefit or gain or helping their outside business partners and family members. So about a year ago, I was speaking at a different conference. Really nice guy approaches me afterwards. And he said, you know, Susan, good speech and all, but I feel like you guys at the Ethics Commission, I think you're kind of missing the real solution to all of these ethics problems in Ohio. And I said, great, lay that on me. What are we missing? We'll implement that by the end of the week. What is it? Here was his solution, everybody. He said to me, not kidding, here's what he said. We simply need to get rid of those particular people in public service who have any personal bias. So in so keeping with that goal, you're all fired, right? But so am I. So is every human being walking planet Earth, right? If you tell me you have no bias in your life, you've never been asked this question, be honest. Who is the person in this room who happens to have the most beautiful grandchildren in the whole wide world? Could I see, there you go, right? There's some bias, believe it or not, we're okay with, right? The law doesn't say that there may be some people in your life about which it might be hard to be completely objective. The law says I can't use my public position to act on those matters that impact those people in my life, right? I'm one of 6 kids. So my mom is 90 now. She has a mess of grandchildren. But in 2022, my mother became a great grandmother for the first time, okay? So recently I was having a conversation with her. She just obviously adores this little guy. He'll be 2 in February. And she said to me, in all seriousness, she was completely earnest. She said, Susan, I'm convinced he's gifted. He's like 22 months old, you guys. How could you possibly conclude that, right? And I said, well, what evidence are we basing this on, Mom? And here's what she said to me. She said, well, I watched him. You know, most babies, when they pick up toys, they either throw them or put them in his mouth. I watched him. He picked up a toy, here's her word, and he studied it. She is convinced this kid is the next Thomas Alva Edison because he looked at a toy. Here's my question. Is my mom biased? You guys okay with that? Yeah, it doesn't mean she would be unfit to hold a public position. What it means is in that moment in her life, if she were the mayor of the city of anywhere, Ohio, and one of her grandkids had some permit, license, application, job application, grant application, you know, whatever, inspection, investigation pending before that public entity, she would simply be required to step back. The law doesn't say we can't have biases about our family and our outside business interests. It says we cannot, in our public capacities, act on those matters. So just be aware, those kind of things do arise very innocently. In fact, I had someone once from a large county who worked in your field, and she worked for this large county board of developmental disabilities. And she approached me, we were doing a big workshop, and she came up to me during a 15-minute break. And she did a number of years ago, I don't know if she still works there or not, she may have retired, but she shared with me what prompted her to get into this field in the first place. She was born, her older sister, she was born to a family that her older sister was born with Down syndrome, very high functioning, has a wonderful life. But from the moment she was this big, this woman had this passion for opportunity and dignity for people, right, who may need just a little extra help. So that has really kind of informed her career and kind of how she has led her life. Here's the thing. Her sister lives in that same county and does in fact seek assistance from that agency. Is that a conflict for that lady? Sure. Is it any reason for her to panic? No, as long as she's not the one acting on matters that impact her sister. Does that make sense? Right? Nobody here is saying the law has said we somehow have to shun everything important in our lives. It just means there might be times in our years of public service where we're going to say, well, I can't act on that matter, kind of thing. That's the real why of the ethics law. You have the right to know that that's how government operates. So one quick story here to kind of get to the heart of how important this why is. This one didn't happen in Ohio, thank God, right? This one, I think it was Nebraska, Kansas, one of those states. There was a state employee whose job was to inspect daycare facilities. Cool. I'm glad they have those inspectors. Guess what she and her husband did in their private lives? Guess what their career was? They own 3 daycare facilities. Guess who was inspecting them? Okay, so here's my question. When I mentioned that story just now, true story, did anybody in this room find that one to hit you just a little more viscerally? Right? Is anybody in that category of, you know, if you mess with me, I might be able to forgive you one day. If you mess with my children or grandchildren, I will hide your body in the trunk of my car and help the search party look for you, right? Yeah, right? This is the real why of the ethics law. You have that right to know that's not how government ought to operate. So now knowing that why, real quickly here on the who of the Ohio Ethics Commission, we're a small group. We are one of the smaller state agencies. There's only 19 of us that work there, but we in fact regulate 600,000 people in public service, all the way from state government, everything I mentioned, cities, counties, and townships and villages, et cetera. And that's a good thing because I'll tell you, even though people are probably most interested in that one, and I understand people kind of like the stories and the scandals, and I appreciate that. The truth is, I'm assuming most of us in our lives and careers would prefer not to hang out with criminal investigators too much. Anybody kind of with me there? Yeah, right? So I will point out especially our advisory and educational opportunities. So I'm the manager of education, training, public speaking, all kinds of public outreach. My job is to take the very legalistic sounding advice that our attorneys give, right? We have 3 marvelous advisory attorneys, and they write these really cool advisory opinions that interpret the statute. My job is to take that very lawyer to lawyer kind of written document and turn it into language that anybody can understand, right? Of the 600,000 of us in public service, it's like fewer than 8% are attorneys, right? So we need those kind of fact sheets and e-courses and classes like this that really wonderful, hardworking people can apply this to their lives. That's my role. So I do webinars and e-courses, live speeches, newsletters. Anybody wants to subscribe to my newsletter? I just issued the 4th quarter yesterday. Let me know, et cetera. But I also want to especially tout those advisory attorneys. That is a free resource available to everybody in your office, any board member, your staff, you, that if that day comes when someone is genuinely thinking to themselves, well, I want to do the right thing under the ethics law, I'm just not sure what that is, let us know and we can give you free binding legal advice. We doing okay so far on the why and the who? Everybody cool? I didn't talk anybody off the ledge so far. We're all okay? All right, rock on. Then we will talk now about these major areas of the Ohio ethics law. Now, obviously, in a 1-hour class, you get that this is the most basic of kind of cliff notes of the ethics law. Do you believe me if I tell you that I could teach a whole semester of the ethics law at a law school? Easy. We could do all kinds of case studies and all kinds of Q&A, et cetera. But we're going to kind of hit sort of the basics as these parts of the law often come up in your field. Okay, so let's start with the first one. We're going to kind of go through them like a table of contents, since like Shakespeare and reading is sort of my theme this year. Okay, let's start with conflicts of interest, right? This is the one that I always feel like ought to be accompanied by an organ sound. I should put up the slide that should say conflict of interest, dun, dun, duh, kind of thing, right? It's a very ominous sounding thing, okay? Here's the issue though. Conflicts of interest are neither illegal nor are they uncommon in Ohio to have. It has never been illegal in the state of Ohio for someone to have a conflict of interest. Is it a conflict of interest that this lady working for the County Board of Developmental Disabilities has a sister who seeks guidance and assistance? Yes, but again, we already established it's not a reason to panic as long as she doesn't act on those matters and, you know, approve and recommend and go behind the scenes, et cetera. It's only illegal when we act on them. So the statute that we go back to on this 10203D, here's the language that we look at a lot. It would have to be a required recusal if in fact this matter, issue, case, proceeding pending before your office has a definite and direct impact either on yourself, a member of your family, someone that is in your outside private business life, right? We would not say to you, well, you know, you're acting on these things that are going to make new rules for the county of how this process is going to work, you know, but you live in the county. So what if someday you have someone in your family who might need the assistance of the county? You better recuse yourself. That's absurd. Nobody would ever interpret the statute that broadly. This is more when there's something definite and direct that impacts a little more uniquely myself, a member of my family, or someone in my private outside business life. The family one definitely can occur, as the example I gave you. The other one that I will note that comes up, and this doesn't mean someone's done something wrong, it just means this is kind of how life works. It is not terribly uncommon that someone in their field, whatever that is, might in their private life do something similar, consulting, counseling, et cetera, part-time job. We understand that can happen. The issue is when someone actually uses their public position to benefit that outside life. Now, this was not a Board of DD story, but I thought you might still appreciate it. There was a state, this might have been the state up north, I think. I can't remember exactly. So forgive me if I'm giving the wrong state. That there was their equivalent of like DYS, the Department of Youth Services, that they had a state employee whose job it was, as young people were being released from a state-run facility, she would set up and schedule at least 10 counseling sessions, right? Before they were going to back to their parents or a foster care home, et cetera. Guess what she did in her private life? She had a counseling business. And guess what she was doing in her state job? Setting up those 10 appointments with her own company. And guess who pays for a lot of those appointments? Because a lot of those kids are indigent. As a taxpayer, anybody have a moment here that you want to go, oh, heck no, kind of thing, right? So that would be a matter of, it wasn't automatically illegal. She had the outside job. It was illegal that she used her public job to benefit her outside role. Now, I want to give you just a couple of the trends that we've seen in the past couple of years. I will say, it doesn't surprise, I think, any of us to know that the pandemic kind of opened new issues, or maybe not brand new, but at least increase some of the thoughts. Does this surprise anybody to know? I put state employee, it could be county, city, township, whatever. Does it surprise anybody to know that we saw an increase in allegations of this during 2020 and 21? Anybody surprised? I do not believe it was always with nefarious intent. I think what kind of happened was people who were working from home for the first time, it was my first time. I've been a state employee since I was 21 years old. I spent my whole adult life. I'd never worked from home. You know, I always checked email on my cell phone, but never actually sat down and could do your job. I think what happened was people got comfortable as time went on. And pretty soon we're seeing things like, hey, we're noticing on Susan's laptop and cell phone a lot of traffic that seems to do more with her underwater basket weaving business than with her public job, right? So just a reminder, if any of your staff, if any of you do have some outside job or consulting, we do have some marvelous resources on our website to help people navigate that they're safe in both of those capacities. I'm not just throwing this out there saying, hey, this is wrong. What I'm saying is when someone's confronted with, I do have this outside job, what do I need to know? Well, that we don't use our public time, public facilities, public equipment, you know, the authority of our public position, our contacts, our influences. I once had a lady come up to me at a conference, sweetest lady. She had no idea that what she was about to set in motion there, that she came up. Now I'm all gonna be scared to come talk to me. Just hide your name tags and come talk to me, okay? So she came up to me and she said, she was like a school treasurer and she had a financial advisory business in her private life. And she walked up to me and said, after hearing you speak, I'm wondering if I should still be using my business card for my private, you know, job or my private business. And I was cringing because I was expecting to see like, her email was going to end in like .gov or .edu. No, it was a private Gmail account, private cell phone. But then I noticed her logo. She had taken the school's logo and put an extra circle with her name and the name of her business around it. And guess, you'll never believe, like you said, John, you can't make this stuff up. Well, she did make this up actually, now that I think about it. Her slogan on her business card was this, I kid you not. You already trust me with the district's money, so you know you can trust me with your own. And I stood there, I'm not speechless real often, as you can imagine. And she really sweetly, innocently said, I'm holding this card like this. And she said, should I stop using that card? And I said, uh-huh. But can I keep this one, please? Right? Yeah, right. So there you go, right? So again, that separation of what we do in our private lives and in our public lives. Now, this next one, let me just say this. I normally abhor slides with a million words on it. So you do not need to read. I hate when public speakers say, I know you can't read this, but all I did was a copy and paste something I found on social media, right? Social media has even changed the way government has done things. So I was helping my niece plan a wedding this past year, and I stumbled across this on a wedding Facebook page. You don't have to read it if you don't want to, because I will summarize. In a nutshell, she clearly identifies herself as a public employee. She uses the phrase town clerk. I'm picturing like a village fiscal officer, something along those lines. She essentially barters free DJ services for her wedding in exchange for making sure they get all kinds of business using her public position, etc. Yeah. Two things here. Number one, can we all unanimously agree this is a very bad idea? Okay. Number two, if any of you ever do decide to violate the Ohio ethics law, if you could go ahead and put that in writing on the internet for us to find, we'd be very great. Our investigations go a lot faster when people confess online. All right, how are we doing so far? Questions, comments, concerns on conflicts. How's everybody doing? Yes, thank you. Okay, is it illegal if we have a levy on the ballot? Are our board members allowed to have signs in their yards? Yes, people are allowed to participate in the normal political process like anybody else. You could put a bumper sticker if you want. You could. The issue with levies become, I'll be honest, more along the lines of like, and I'm not trying to pick on teachers, just school levies are just an easy example. Or maybe some of your staff using public time, public equipment to advance their levy. Like you couldn't use the copy machine in your office to make flyers to please vote for the levy. You couldn't have your staff on public time making phone calls, encouraging having a phone bank. It's the normal political, having the bumper sticker, the sign in your yard, that's all, as long as you're following all the normal campaign finance rules. Yes, that is okay. How else are we doing? Yes, way in the back. You had mentioned the private business operating private business in addition to public roles. Yes. So the whole thing about taking private calls, okay. So I will tell you, there's always levels of what, we would pursue. I will be honest. If the allegation that we received was, we have an employee who occasionally takes calls from their kid when they're running late from soccer practice, they don't pick me up till 6. I won't lie to you, we have bigger fish to fry than that. Where we would more likely get involved, honestly, is people who are using public time, public equipment for a for-profit venture. That's where we would more likely get involved. And even then, I will tell you, if it can be handled internally, I think that benefits everybody, right? If it is a disciplinary action, if it's sometimes people get terminated, et cetera. There was a firefighter once who had a house painting business. He would paint like shutters and things. And guess what he was using? The ladder engine truck with the, right, yeah. So yeah, he agreed to avoid criminal charges. All right, I will. I don't know if he was terminated, if they gave him a chance to resign, something like that. So I think there are levels. If in fact, though, you are seeing something that really, really concerns you, you can reach out and you are allowed to talk to our investigators and say, would this be more appropriately handled in-house, or can the ethics commission? We can get involved. Sometimes it's just a matter of how severe was it? Because the truth is, sometimes we have more cases and, you kind of have to do the inverted pyramid, that the lesser offensive ones kind of get dropped off sometimes, I admit. But you can always call us and ask. Anybody else? How we doing, everybody? We're good? All right, let me give you a few examples. And poor John was like going to do the Oprah thing, and I beat him to it, right? Yeah. Oh, I probably just dated myself. Is there anybody here who doesn't know who Oprah is? Just now, if I said Phil Donahue, I'd really be dating myself. I was a little kid then. All right. Here's a few for your industry. Can your relatives seek help from your agency even though you work there? Yes or no? Here's what I want you to know about about any criminal law. Anytime the answer is yes, I want you to assume there's a comma, however. What would be the comma, however, here? hands off. I can't be involved, someone else, et cetera. Now, this doesn't mean if you're the superintendent, no one is suggesting you're like, but I'm everybody's boss. That's okay. We're not suggesting that somehow you have to quit your job. It would just be a matter of you're not doing those day-to-day decisions and advocating and lobbying behind the scenes. Make sense? Rock on. All right. How about this one? Again, I think I actually beat myself to the punch here. This was the one about the DYS employee that I mentioned. Not this one. Do you all interact with outside vendors, providers, privately owned companies? Is that a normal part of your careers? Okay, this is a really legitimate question then. Maybe not you, somebody in your staff. Let's say there is provider even a correct word? Forgive me that I don't know your industry well. Is provider a decent word to use? Okay, so let's say there's a provider that you guys think really highly of, you have this wonderful working relationship with, and someone on your staff sees a job opening on that company's website. Are they allowed to apply? Yes or no? Okay, this is fun. I always love when this happens. How many of you say, no, that's a bad idea? All right, how many of you say, yes, this is not the Hotel California. You cannot tell people that they're never allowed to check out. All right, how many of you are afraid to vote? This is in jeopardy. You don't lose any money if you get one wrong, right? By the way, if there's anybody here who doesn't know what I'm talking about when I reference the Hotel California, that is your homework assignment. I do not want you to put head to pillow tonight before you have familiarized yourself with the Eagles' greatest hits. Yes? There's my public service announcement. Okay, the truth is, no matter what you voted, I'm going to give you guys all this one because I copped out, and here's why. In all fairness, I know there's the old joke. Any attorneys in the room? Anybody know what the old joke is? The answer to every question is what? It depends, right? Because in all fairness, the facts and circumstances, if someone asked for our advice on this, the facts and circumstances of that person would then inform how we wrote that advice. If someone were to say, hey, I'm the primary liaison for that provider and I oversee their contract to make sure they're fulfilling what they've said they were going to do and we retain them, no, they can't negotiate a new salary while they're overseeing them. If we have a different employee that says, hey, I've been thinking about going to the private sector. This is a great company. I'm very interested in this job, but I've never had word one, never had a conversation, email. I've never had anything to do with that company. Could that person apply? Yes. So it's not that we're sort of, we're not capricious in the answers that we give. It's that we want to give you an answer based on that person's situation, which is why that advice, it's free, it's legally binding, and it's available to every single person in public service. Are we okay on conflicts? We doing okay? You want to turn anybody into me today while we're here? That's always fun too. What county didn't show up? We'll get them, right? I'm just joking. I'm just joking. All right. Then let's move on to an area of the ethics law that we do get lots of gifts, questions about gifts. Is it fair to say in your field, is this a time of year where gifts are more likely? Can that happen? Yeah. So I once dropped off a pumpkin bread or something like that to a fire department where we live. And it was, I waited too long. It was like December 23rd. And this firefighter, he turned a little green, right? And he was like, couldn't you guys spread this out, April or August kind of thing. So I understand that. Here's what I will tell you right off the bat. It is not true that legally all gifts are prohibited. If you ever interact with, or if you ever work for a county office, a board that says, we don't want our folks to take a cup of coffee or a sip of water from a vendor, that's completely fine if that's an internal practice or policy they want to be especially stringent about. That's okay. Statutorily, in terms of what we would charge people with crimes, it isn't true that not every gift is off limits. But what I will also tell you is 10203 E and F do not give us a specific dollar amount. You will not find in the statute, well, as long as this gift is worth less than, 10 or 15 or 20 or $50 or whatever number you want to make up. We don't have something specific like that. What we have in the statute, hang on a minute, are these two words. Is this meal, this gift, this thing of value, this whatever it is it substantial, and is it from an improper source? Now, I know you're probably thinking, yes, because that's much simpler than giving us a dollar amount. Thank you very much for that, you pedantic, tedious ethics nerds. You, right? In all fairness, dollar amounts, in my never to be humble opinion, can work fine in policy. If you all ever decide to put into place internally, just for you and for your staff, hey guys, don't take anything worth more than, 15 or 20 bucks. That's completely fine, as long as you choose a very modest dollar amount like that, right? The reason that it can be more challenging in criminal law is, what if we had a dollar amount? What if we had 20 bucks? We don't, so don't write that down. But what if we had 20 and a public employee accepted a gift worth 25? How much do you want me to pay our investigators and investigative attorneys to rectify that $5 crime over a course of several, you know what I mean? So we haven't pursued that. So what we do is break down these words. So let's start with the second word first, improper. All that word means is, who is the source of the gift? The giver. Who is it that wants to pick up my tab at lunch? Who is it that's offering us this box of cookies? Who is it that's saying, I have an extra ticket to, a football game or a Broadway show that's coming to town? Who's the source of this thing of value? For all of you, I'm gonna put in the top two, smush them together a little bit, vendors and potential vendors, the companies, the providers that you actually do business with, totally fine. The regulated one, I don't know if I'm going to put the clients and the people who use the wonderful services. I'm going to put those folks more in the, I have a vested interest in matters before our public office, some decision case that has to be decided, et cetera. No one is suggesting, by the way, that your clientele or that the vendors that you all work with, the providers you contract with, I'm not suggesting they're improper people or that they all have improper motives. What this part of the law would be saying is that those vendors, potential vendors, the people who seek the services of your agency, they would be improper sources of gifts we call substantial, the other part of this two-half equation. Now, right off the bat, can we all agree there are plenty of gifts out there that are not substantial? Have any of you in your career ever received stuff like this? Like when I came through the front door, so I had to walk through the entire vendor area to get to the registration table. Can we all agree we're going to put that in the nominal, de minimis? Like the Ethics Commission's not losing a lot of sleep if someone ate a Mr. Goodbar. Or do you ever notice those only appear at conferences or trick or treat? You cannot find a Mr. Goodbar in like February at Valentine's. I don't know what that's all about, right? It's like it comes out for the fall, right? And the coffee mug and the keychains and ball caps or water bottles or whatever they're all giving out, nominal, de minimis. If you, again, internally ever tell your staff, let's not even take those things from our vendors, that's completely fine, but that would be an internal practice. We're not going to open a full-blown criminal investigation and spend your tax dollars because somebody accepted a cheap little box of assorted chocolates one time at the holidays or at a conference like this. So these aren't the gifts that are actually getting people into trouble. Although I must confess to an error that I made in this past year. I was doing a webinar from home one day in the past year. And when you're doing a webinar, there's often polls or quizzes, things like that. There's three legitimate reasons that public speakers do those. One, it does track attentiveness. There's no getting away from that. We want to know that you're still there and you didn't walk away and go make a sandwich. Number two, it solidifies concepts. Those polls really do help kind of put things from the short term to the long-term memory banks. And number three, it gives your public speaker a chance to swig some water, or in my case, hot tea. I'm a hot tea drinker, right? So one day I had done a webinar, logged off, and I look at the comments to see, do I need to send a fact sheet? Do I need to answer a question and follow up? And there was a lady who had written very nice things. Oh, I really enjoyed this. You're really funny. And here's what she wrote. Please don't ever lose that wicked sense of humor. Your coffee cup cracked me up. And I was like, my coffee cup. I'm looking around my desk at home. Do you know what mug I had randomly grabbed out of my own kitchen cabinet 2 minutes before going live on a webinar? It's a big white, it's not a little dainty teacup. It's a big old white mug because I tend to be a little frenetic and a little, I can be clumsy because I move fast. It's a big mug with a big hand like this. But my big white mug has bright purple letters on the front that read, "This might be wine." That's what the ethics lady was drinking out of at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning on a live webcam talking about the ethics law. So not every gift is illegal. It's just a bad idea now and again, right? So you get the drift. These are not the things that those vendors are handing out or that your clients might bring a banana bread at the holidays. Not what we're talking about. When we talk about these gifts that are substantial, and I don't have to make these examples up, but we've got plenty of them. Things that people accepted from a vendor, from a potential vendor, a wannabe vendor that was clearly more than one of those nominal de minimis things. I could name 24 right off the top of my head, but there's just a couple ideas, right? We have seen everything from jewelry, home repair, appliances, travel expenses, furniture. We've seen it all. The entertainment things seem to be a never-ending one, that we're always getting questions about golf outings or about games or things like that. Just out of curiosity, is there anybody here who's not in mourning about last Saturday's game? Do I have any Go Blue people out there? I have a couple. Yeah, there's a couple. I will tell you, I live in Columbus. I've lived here since I was 21. I'm married to a Wolverine. It makes life harder. I'm cool with it. I don't mind. He's so happy when they win that I'm almost like, okay, you're so darn cute when they win, right? But the only thing I've ever vetoed is something outside our house. The basement's maize and blue, but I'm like, I've lived here a long time. Let's not paint a bullseye on our front door, right? Those would be the kind of things we'd say, no, that vendor, that grateful client, that potential vendor, they can't gift us with things like this. Even if someone says to me, all the normal even ifs, even if I promise it won't influence me, we've already signed the contract, so it couldn't influence me. I'm not that kind of person. That's great, because I'll tell you what, I don't want you to be convicted of bribes, but this is not the bribery statute. We do not have to prove that someone's behavior or the outcome was altered based on the gift. All we would have to prove legally is that this public employer official accepted that substantial thing of value from an improper source. The other, even if I get a lot, is this. Well, what if that vendor, that's a normal thing they do with all of their clients? Well, I grant you, if it's like an IT company, maybe they work with lots of private sector people. They can give whatever they want to private sector folks. They can, right? All bets are off when it comes to those of us in public service. So I would just say this about this gift area of the ethics law. Anything beyond the little tin of cookies or the little trinkety things, I always say, channel your inner Nancy Reagan and just say no, okay? Does anybody remember the DARE campaign in the 80s? Yeah. To me, the gift part of the ethics law is one of the sadder parts of the ethics law that people are still getting into trouble over, because in my mind, it's the easiest one to obey. Here's two great phrases: no, thank you, and I'll pick up my own check. Those two things are never going to, I'm always amazed that people are still falling at the feet of this part of the law because it's so easy to comply with. Now, while we're here, let's do a couple conference issues and the gift part of the ethics law. You allowed to pick up the Mr. Good bars and the water bottles out here? All right. You don't have to answer this one if you don't want to. Let me just put it out there as a hypothetical. I've heard of this happening. Let's pretend some of those vendors have donated some really cool things for door prizes later. No? Rock on. I like hearing this. You know that happens at conferences all the time, right? If in fact that happened and you won the flat screen TV that one of those vendors donated, to whom does that TV belong? The office. Non-negotiable. There's absolutely no comma, whatever afterwards, nothing. It does not belong to us, okay? That's a common one. Another one that does come up is, I don't know if this is happening here, it's totally fine if not, but have you ever been to a conference where some company or vendor, they underwrite or host or sponsor a lunch or a cocktail hour or whatever? We had a guy, God love him, from Ohio EPA. He's an environmental engineer, call us from his conference. And it was just about to go to lunch, and he noticed on the agenda, the luncheon was sponsored by Waste Management. And he called us and said, I inspect their landfills. Should I go to Subway and get a sandwich instead? And we were like, you're the cutest thing in the whole wide world. Look at you being all ethical. The truth is, if it's a legitimate educational function like a conference, everybody's invited, it's right here on site, it's on the agenda, that's okay. What you don't want to do later tonight, and I'm sure this won't happen, but I'm just saying this happens, is one of these nice vendors says, hey, if you're interested in hearing more about our product, we're going to go to the Smanchy Fancy Steakhouse and order $80 bottles of wine tonight, and we'd be happy. Not everybody's invited. It's not here on the hotel's grounds. It's not part of the you with me? Okay, this is a common one. So if in fact you're worried about the cookies and the things that clients might bring, I'm not so worried about that. We're worried more about from those outside vendors, et cetera. Okay, gift issues. What's on your mind so far? How we doing, everybody? You're all afraid of me now, aren't you? You're like, I'm not telling her anything, okay? All right, fair enough. All right, we'll go through. Yes or no? Of course, as long. All right, I'm going to skip a couple of these in the interest of time. We talked about the conference thing. I do want to spend some time here in the time we have left on this part of the ethics law again, and we can revisit. If a gift question comes to you, we can revisit anything. A public contract, this is any time your county agency spends money. There is certainly a far more erudite sounding definition of that phrase, public contract, the administrative code. But in a nutshell, whenever your county, your board, your office, when you spend public money, that's a public contract. It's totally normal. It's completely legal that you guys are spending public money, whether it's salaries or you bought a new laptop for one of your employees, whatever, or it is retaining the services of a provider. Totally normal, absolutely fine and routine. However, anytime you're talking about public money, you kind of have to figure there will be some restrictions. All right. The first restriction under this part of the ethics law is one of our felony provisions. It looks a lot like that conflict slide I had up earlier, which conflicts and gifts are first-degree misdemeanor violations. Don't let the word misdemeanor throw you. You don't want a first-degree misdemeanor on your record. But in all fairness, this is the first felony provision that we're hitting. And I know you're thinking, well, it looks just like that conflict one. In all fairness, in the conflict world, if I'm forgive me that it's not a board of DD example, if I'm a health department inspector and I inspect the restaurant owned by my sister, I have committed a first-degree misdemeanor. I use the authority of my public position to secure a thing of value, a past inspection, for a member of my family. Bad idea, first-degree misdemeanor. In this part of the ethics law, I would be using my public position, hired, elected, appointed, doesn't matter, to secure public money, either for myself, a member of my family, or an outside business associate. So for example, let's honestly say that your office, you really do want to overhaul something IT-wise, and you really want to retain the services of an IT company, even if it's a short-term contract. It's not ongoing for years and years like a provider might be short-term. And someone in your office has a brother who owns an IT consulting company. Here would be my first question. Knowing that this employee works for your county board and his or her brother has an IT business, is that brother even allowed to submit a bid? Yes or no? Yes, right? Because they're not a public employee. They can submit it. The restriction in this case is on whom? The public employee. That person could be like, hey, bro, good luck. I mean, deep down in my heart, I hope you get it, but you're on your own. I'm not putting in a good word for you. I am not talking you up. I'm not talking down your competition. I'm not hand delivering your bid spec response. I'm not advocating, lobbying, signing off on, voting for, nothing. I'm not even your conduit of information, even if you get that contract legally. That is definitely the mandate. If it is, certainly myself, I could never authorize a contract for myself, obviously. I cannot be part of getting a contract for a member of my family or against someone that I have a business relationship with in my private outside life. This is one where recusal is absolutely your best friend. It's statutorily mandated and very protective, especially when we're talking about these final two bullet points. If it is a member of my family, if it's someone that I do work with part-time, I do consulting work, it's a client, it's my boss in my private life, recusal keeps me safe. I'm out of this 100%. There is a part of this statute where recusal does not solve the whole problem, and that's that first bullet point. So now in our example, let's say that your county office, you need a plumber to come in. There is something wonky going on with your water supply in your office. And it's just, we need a plumber to get in here. And one of your employees also has a plumbing license in his or her private life. This is the part of the ethics law that says the problem is not solved by that public employee recusing him or herself. There's a very specific, let me skip ahead here real quickly. There is a very specific prohibition under the Ohio ethics law. Forgive me for making you dizzy there for a minute. That in a nutshell says this to all of us in public service. If any of us in our private outside lives own or co-own a business, we do consulting, we sell widgets in our private lives, we need to conclude right here, right now, that we will never be vendors to the county government that you serve. Not just your office, by the way, your county government. If in addition to your work with the board, if you have an underwater basket weaving business, not only are you not going to sell those services to your board of DD, you're also not going to sell it to the county board of health or the prosecutor's office or the county parks and rec board, right? That's your public entity. This is one of our two most commonly violated parts of the Ohio ethics law. And I will tell you, we do sometimes see the big dollar amounts. Early in my career with the Ethics Commission, we had a township trustee convicted of selling $60,000 worth of construction material to his township. So we've seen those big dollar amounts. Can I tell you what's way more common? Stuff like t-shirts, right? Any of you provide t-shirts or polo shirts or things to your staff for when they're out in the field? Totally normal, completely legitimate use of public funds. I grant you that. But those polo shirts or t-shirts better not be sold to your county office by an employee or board member who owns a t-shirt printing business, right? We get that one way. These, oh, but ethics lady, it's just once in a while. It's on an as needed basis. It wasn't that much money. I hear this from fiscal people all the time. It wasn't enough money that it hit that minimum amount that we have to put it out for a bid. I don't care if it was 5 cents. People in public service do not have their own governmental entities as clients in their private lives, okay? Help me spread the message on this. And here's what I will offer to you. I totally understand, everybody, how easy it is for me to stand up here and say that, because I'm not going to work on Monday morning with your colleagues. I'm not the one that has to say, oh, I sure wish we could have bought those polo shirts from you, Janet, but no, we can't, because you still have to maintain that relationship. Here's what I will offer to you. 2 things. Number 1, I have a fact sheet on our website. I actually have 2 of them about people selling things, but one is for state government. The statute's even more stringent for those of us in state government. So I have one for all of you called Selling Goods and Services to a Local Government Agency. You're considered local. Print that off, send them the URL. And here's the second thing I will offer. Throw us under the bus, right? We're okay if they don't like us anymore, right? Because you still have to work with them tomorrow. Oh, I really wish we could have bought, but that mean old ethics lady said we were not allowed to buy those t-shirts. We're cool with that. If she wants to call and yell at me, it's good. We'll be friends by the end of the phone call, right? This is an area of the law where we see way too much of. So I would covet and appreciate your help in spreading the message of this part of the ethics law. Now, I mentioned this is one of our 2 most commonly violated parts of the Ohio ethics law. The other most commonly violated part of the ethics law also is a public contract violation. Does anybody want to take a guess what it is? We haven't talked about it yet. Okay, good. When I put it up, you're going to go like this. All right, here's the other most commonly violated part of the Ohio ethics law. I'm just going to appreciate my joke. You get a nepotism, a relatively All right, it's early in the day, John, clearly. I'm warming them up for the next speaker though, okay? Here's the thing about nepotism. This is not the violation of 2 people who happen to be related to one another by blood or by marriage, both working for the same board. Has that ever happened? Sure. People fall in love and they get married, or you have brothers and sisters or parent and child. We get that. The crime of nepotism, the 4th degree felony that is nepotism in government is this. I was already in government, board member, staff member, management, whatever. I already was affiliated with XYZ public office. And a member of my family, which I'll define on the next slide, right? Because I don't want you to think we're talking about your 4th cousin, twice removed sort of thing. That a member of my family is actually seeking a public job. And I, the current board member or staff member, whatever, I do not recuse myself. I insert myself in that process. It could be something as simple as delivering a resume or following up. It could be I'm their character reference and I stop by to tell you about my loved one. I stop by the HR office to ask how the hiring process is going. I go to that supervisor and say, could you give them a courtesy interview as a courtesy to me? I review, I recommend, advocate, lobby. whatever the case may be, if I stick my nose into that hiring process in any way, shape, or form that either benefits or detracts from, but it's usually benefits a member of my family, I potentially could be found guilty of a 4th-degree felony. So if a member of your family, there you go. These folks, by the way, doesn't matter where they live. I don't care if they live in your house or not in your house. These are your family. If one of these folks wants to apply for a public job at your agency or maybe an adjacent county, et cetera, wish them well. That's great. Hey, good luck. I hope it works out. But that's it. You don't make phone calls to that other superintendent, that other county on their behalf. You don't sit in on, you don't recommend, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Here's what I will tell you about the nepotism part of the ethics law. Not only is it one of our 2 most commonly violated parts of the ethics law, it is my observation that nepotism is one of the most effective ways to make sure the public does not trust us in government. When they see people getting government jobs because they were well connected and not necessarily well qualified, they're not going to trust anything else we do either. So even if your family is well qualified, that's marvelous. Let that prove itself through the normal hiring process. Now, for those of you who think to yourself, if I'm high up in the organization, can my family legitimately apply? Can I recuse myself? I will tell you that's going to be a case-by-case situation because honestly, I'll just be really honest here. The bigger counties usually have bigger numbers and staff. Yes, that's just normal. You're going to have more employees at the Cuyahoga County Board than at Vinton County, right? Makes sense to me, lesser population. If in fact I work for a board where we say, well, we have, 200 people that work for us, the opportunity for me to recuse is plentiful. It shouldn't be hard at all for me to recuse myself. If that's possible, yes, your family member can get the job. If in all honesty, you say, I'm only one of this many full-time employees and I make all the final hiring decisions, if recusal is not possible, then your relatives do not get this job. I have several nepotism resources on our website, some a little more scholarly, legal sounding, but the one that I would recommend, it's just an FAQ. I admit to you, I wrote this fact sheet with the current American attention span in mind, right? It is very much written, question, answer, question, answer. What I've discovered is when you're going to answer a question with no more than 1 paragraph, you end up with twice as many questions. So it's very broken down, but very easy to navigate, look through, and find what you're looking for. Use it, pass it out, read it, review it at a board meeting, at a manager's meeting. Just remind people of how important this part of the law is and how seriously we do take this area of the ethics law. There's a lot of things I will do for my family, everybody. Being a convicted felon is not on the list of things I'll do for them. Because the truth is, what would happen if I hired my sister to come work for me at the Ethics Commission? If I'm found guilty of that felony of committing nepotism, what happens to her job anyway when I'm convicted? It's over, it's done. So in the end, it's a lose-lose-lose situation. I'm a felon, she lost her job, and now the public doesn't trust us, okay? So again, just as an example, take these next guys. I don't care how well connected they may be. Would you want them to get a public job that they might be going after?
We want to tell you the stuff we're not good at,
Our weaknesses.
so we're clear up front.
Okay. We're not generally comfortable in an office setting, I would say.
I get stuff.
I won't go into an office that's never been used before.
I am no good before 11 a.m.
I also get headaches from computers, so I can't be around them for too long.
I take stuff.
If someone go up and down with the elevator.
I have a weakness for sweets.
Other weaknesses? We're slow learners. We're not particularly good listeners. That'll be a huge problem.
We're also slow learners.
Do you want these people to get a public job? I'm just saying, right? If you need nepotism backup, let me know. I have all kinds of stuff on our website. Okay, so the very last thing, if anybody here is thinking about your next chapter of life, whether it's retirement, whether you've been thinking I might move to the private sector, et cetera, we do have resources on our website that do talk about that 1-year cooling off period that in a nutshell says in that first year after you've left public service. Now, mind you, this is only when you sever ties with your county government. If you take another job within your county government, you're still a county employee. This is when you're actually severing ties. You're going to be a state employee, you're going to be in the private sector, you're going to do consulting, whatever. In that first year, we are not allowed to represent, essentially communicate on behalf of our new job, new client, new boss, new company, whatever. We can't communicate on their behalf to anybody in government for 1 year if we would be discussing something that I had worked on. Now, here's what I will tell you. 2 things. Number 1, the higher you are on the TO, the more you've participated in things. Even if you never personally talked about it, if you signed off on something, that's participation, all right? And secondly, I will say this. If you're wondering what's the point, so in that first year, I leave here, I retire, and then I go work for this staff over here or this consulting company or whatever. The point of this part of the ethics law is not for you to feign ignorance of everything you're an expert on from all your years of service. That's why they hired you. I understand that. The point is, in that first year, you couldn't advocate on their behalf to someone in government, your old office, on those projects you had been working on. The idea of, hey, now that I'm on this side of the table, I understand what they meant. Could we switch directions? That'd be a big help to me, to my old colleagues and friends, et cetera. It's only 1 year. It goes much more quickly than people realize. And it really does protect the public from those kind of, unfair sort of past influences, even with past friends, et cetera. For all of you, I know you know this, just a quick reminder, the ethics law does also remind us anything that you encountered that was statutorily confidential, there's no limit on that. That is, as long as it's confidential, we keep it thus, sometimes till the end of our lives, to be morbid for just 1 moment, okay? All right, how you doing? We're good? All right, then let me give you our final information here. Here's our website. Chock full of information, fact sheets, advisory opinions. That's our main number. You can reach at this number. You can reach me. You can talk to an advisory attorney. You can talk to one of our investigators. You can talk to our executive director if you want to. We really would like to be helpful and be there for you. So I would just close by saying this on behalf of the Ohio Ethics Commission. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for using your intelligence, your education, your passion to provide dignity and opportunities to a population that, in my opinion, is sometimes overlooked in the hallowed halls of the State House. Thanks so much for being you. Take care, everybody. Have a good conference. Thanks, John.